how to add a gradient layer in Photoshop. First thing to do, go to Layer, go to New Fill Layer and then Gradient. You can also use solid color or pattern. So click there. Panel will come up asking for details about the layer. This is totally for the layer itself, and this will be the information shown here, as well as the blend mode for that layer. You can change this later. So click OK, and there's your default. You've got here transparency. You can see the transparent effect there, all the way through to grey, and you can see the result on the screen like that. You can change gradients, so you don't have to use the default one. There's thousands of gradients. You can also find many additional gradients free online. Just click here, and I'm just going to go with this one. I can select any of them. You notice here it's linear. Linear design, or you can change it to radial. You can see a radial effect there. You can go for angle, and you can also go for reflected. And you can see the effect, obviously blue, yellow, and blue. That's the reflected effect. And then click there and diamond. You get a diamond effect. You can also set it to a square effect as well by changing the angle. So let's just go back to linear. Because what you can also do is you can move it. So with this open, and this panel needs to be available, you need to be seeing that. You can simply go to the document and just move it back and forth, reposition it. So if you want the yellow at the top, move it up there. If you want it down the bottom, move it down there. And you can do that for all of the Photoshop gradients. Just reposition it in the center there. Also, you can change the angle, but unfortunately there's no interactive way of changing that. What you need to do is go here. You can enter a value, say 0, and it will go that way. Or 45, and you can see it's diagonally. And you can do that via the angle setting here. You can just drag this around. You can also use the Shift key. When you use the Shift key, it will be constrained. So 150, 135, and so on, 120, 105. You might find that easier to use. Also, you can set the scale for the gradient. So just click there and just make it like that. You make it small and you can see what happens. It squeezes it in. 26 down to 9. You get a very thin, laser-like gradient effect. And you can push that up and you can push it to 206 to fill the entire screen with that central colour. You can still reposition it. So if you decide, you know what, I want more blue, you can get an effect like that. Also what you can do is, let's put it down again, reduce it down to say 90, reposition there. You can also reverse it. Obviously in this case, no difference because of course it's blue and yellow. But if I select a different gradient, so say this one, see the effect there, go to reverse, and instead of red at the top and yellow, green, etc., simply click reverse and it will reverse it. It's the equivalent of setting it to 180 for the angle. So deselect that. You can also set the dither as well. Obviously in some cases, very little effect. Just deselect that. What you can also do is reset the alignment. So you just simply click there, because you might move it. So you push it there, you might decide, I don't want it like that, I want it back to the default. Simply click reset, puts it back to that. It doesn't change these settings though. And also you can fit it to the document and that will of course change it slightly as well. You'll also notice at the bottom there's an option for smooth. And down there you can also go for perceptual. Very subtle differences, but linear, classic, and then go to smooth. And then the best one, stripes, if you want sort of bar design. So it's great for creating some interesting striped or bar effects. And again, you can still manipulate these, move these around as well. And you can use that with all of the other styles. So just click here, say radial, and you'll get a lovely circular design like that, or angle, or reflected, or diamond. And let's just go back to smooth. So you've got that. Once you're happy with all these changes, you've got your design, you can then click OK. And there you have your gradient filled layer. You can manipulate it even more. So with this, you can decide, you know what, I don't want it. I don't want to see it at this point. So you can simply remove it. It's just a layer, a standard layer, which you can remove very easily and delete as well. You decide you don't want it, you can simply click delete. Also, you can blend it with other things. So if you've got an image in the background, you can blend this gradient layer with an image. And the great thing about the gradient layer, it means it's still live. Like this, all you need to do, go to Layer, New Fill Layer and Gradient. And then you can change the blend mode here if you wish. So let's just go here and say, go with Darken. Now at this point, you will see no difference whatsoever. You haven't got the gradient yet. Click OK. And now instead of normal, you've got Darken blending mode. And that will be shown over here. You can see here, this layer has been created and you've got Darken there. You can also change gradient again. So click that one. You can see the effect there. You get this lovely colour effect applied on top of any image that you've got. And you of course can select other ones, something like that or that, to create a whole range of different designs very quickly. Again, you can simply go here to linear and maybe go for radial and you can reposition it. In this case, reverse really does make it very useful. So reverse, click there and that will position it, say, there. And again, you've got that image, click OK and you've got your layer. You can now manipulate that layer. So again, you can go here and you can say, I don't want darken, I want multiply or colour burn. So it can create a whole range of super colourful designs. If you decide, oh, you know what, I don't want that there, I want it moved down, you can simply double click just to get that accessed again, because you can't move it. You can't move the gradient layer. There's nothing to move it. There's nothing there other than the superficial layer on top. There's no pixels involved. It's purely a colour effect. So double click and then you can turn around and say, oh, you know what, I want it just moved over to there. So you can just reposition it. Simply just drag and reposition that. Maybe you want it there or down there and so on. And again, you can change your gradient. So click, there's a whole range of different gradients to choose. So it's great for maybe click metal, get something like that. Or maybe go to colour harmonies, click that one instead and so on. So you can see a variety of different designs can be created simply by these gradients and then click OK. What you can also do is any layer can be turned into a smart object. And the great thing about that is, one, the gradient layer is still there and still active. The smart object just encloses it. And you can then manipulate that smart object. Where I said before, it's no longer, it's not a pixel layer. There's nothing really there. It's just a sort of sheen on top of this image. Well, what you can do, layer and smart objects and convert to smart object. So now, this is now turned into a smart object. The name hasn't changed. You can change the name. If you want to, you call it a smart gradient. But now what you can do, you can manipulate this gradient effect as well. So filter, go down here. You notice now you've got all these options here. So you could go to blur and maybe Gaussian blur. Just apply that. And now you can see what happens. You actually get a blurred effect. So create that. Click OK. You can also go to filter, maybe use the distorts. So filter, distort and wave. In wave you can create something like that. Let's just change the number of generators. Change the wavelength. Change that. Change the amplitude, and you can create a variety of different colour effects and click OK. And now you can see you've got this lovely gradient effect on top of your image, which you can always remove or bring back. And you've still got the blend mode. So you might say, no, I don't want colour burn, I want linear burn, or lighten, or screen, or colour dodge, and go down hard mix or difference to create a variety of different designs. Not only you can apply more than one filter, of course. You can apply 10 or 15 filters to it. But the great thing about this gradient layer, it's still accessible. So at any point, you can always go to the smart object. And you can see a little smart object there. Just double click, and then you're into your gradient fill layer, exactly the same as before. Now, simply again go here and double click. And you can change it. You decide, you know what? I didn't want radial. I wanted really that. Or maybe go click here and maybe change the gradient. So go for a slightly different colour gradient there. And now click OK. And then come out of this. You'll notice when you do that smart objects, it's into a document called PSB. You can't see it. It's on your disk. Obviously, it's storing it temporarily. But click OK and close it. Save. And it will take it back. And now you can see the gradient's changed. You've got the effect applied and you can see your wave effect and all those sort of things. But the gradient is still there and still modifiable at any point. And that's using smart objects. So it's really worth checking out a smart object. But also with gradient fill layers is you can combine them. So let's just remove that one. You can go to layer again, new fill layer and gradient. So just do that. Again, you give it a name, give a colour. Now if I decide, you know what, I want that to be red. Again, it doesn't change anything, the gradient colour. It's just purely for label purposes. And go with normal again. Click OK. And you can see it goes back to the default. Click there, select one of the gradients, maybe that one. With that, you can change various settings again, the linear. Maybe you decide to go to angle. You can see the effect there and set scale. Some of these settings will have no effect. So if you reduce that to 1% with angle, you'll notice it does nothing. But you can still move it around. So you decide you want that point up the top. You just reposition it, just simply drag on the document, put it up there and click OK. Well, now you've got that. What you can also do is you can duplicate it. You can right click and you've got options here for various things, but you can also go over here, right click there and go to duplicate layer. So with that, you've got this and click OK. So now you've got two layers, exactly the same layers. But what you can do with this, you can then double click here. You can manipulate it. So you can push this down and drag there. Again, you could set different things, maybe go for radial. Don't have to have them the same. You can change scale like that and click OK. So now with this, go up here with this one selected. This is the key thing, not the bottom one there. Simply go up here and go for, say, difference. And you've got something like that. But these gradient fill layers are still editable. So at any point you can always go to this one, double click that and click there and maybe change it to another gradient. And then you might decide, you know what, I want the position slightly different, maybe drag it down there because it's got some transparency. You notice there at the sides, you ever see that, those sort of transparency, just there means you can just move it down so you can see, say, maybe more of the face and then click OK. And then you've got that lovely colourful effect, which you can then manipulate in many other ways. Also, what you can do, if you decide, I don't need the gradient fill layers anymore, simply go to layer and you can flatten image. And it all flattens into a single gradient and image effect, which you can then go to layer and again, new fill layer and gradient. And you can add additional gradients on top of that one. So then click OK and you can see then you can manipulate that. Well, how to use maybe that stripes feature. The stripes feature is great because what you can do, let's just go back to this one, double click and go to stripes. You can see there. What you can do, you can also scale. So you reduce that down, maybe just put it there. You can manipulate the angle and click OK. Well, you can do exactly the same as the other one where you can duplicate that layer. So right click, duplicate layer, then click OK. You've got exactly the same. But again, to edit the gradient layer, you always need to have the panel displayed. So double click here. This is the key thing. Double click and that will bring that up. And you can then reposition that, maybe change the scale. So increase that and then maybe change the angle and then click OK. Now blend modes, go down here and you can see as you change that difference, you can create a whole range of different unusual gradient designs super quick using this approach. You can also edit the gradients as well within that panel. So layer and new fill layer and gradient. With this, click OK. And then you can go here and at any point you can always just click here. Just click this gradient and that will bring up the gradient editor. And you can see how the gradient is made up. In this case, you've got this grey. You might decide, you know what, I don't want grey, but I do want the transparency there. So you can see the transparency, you can see through this to the lower layers. So just click here, colour, or just click here and maybe make it red and close. And also what you can do, you can manipulate this. So you decide, you know what, I want to change that, push that towards there. And you can see as you do that, the gradient will change on the screen. And also you can go here, click there, and maybe click there again. Maybe this time go for blue. So blue and click OK. Now at the moment, it's still got transparency because along the top bar is the transparency. Here, that's set to 100%. But you can also just go along to this one and you'll notice that's got 0, so you can see through. You can change it. Simply click here and increase that. And now you can see you've got your blue and you've got your red. And you can manipulate these stops again, just redo that. And also at any point you can always click somewhere in the centre or anywhere else, add another stop. And then just click here and again, maybe go for green and click OK. So you can create a whole range of different gradients very quickly. You don't need just these gradients here. So you can make your own all via this panel. And also you can store it away. You decide you like this one, love it, just click here. Just go to new and that will add it into these presets. So new, and you can see down here you've got your gradient. So you can use it later and use it once you start Photoshop up again, then you can use it again and click. You'll also notice you've got import and export. So if you've got some gradients from someone else, you can import them. And also you can export all the gradients you've got selected. You can export them to a file and that file can be given to someone else or of course used for future projects. And again, click OK. And now close that, click OK again. And there you've got your gradient layer. There's also masks involved. So if you go up here to layer and new fill layer and gradient, select that, click OK, you'll notice what you've got. You've got this at the side. Creates a mask for you straight away. So let's go over here, click here again, and maybe go down there and select that previous gradient. So there it is, applied again, using linear, angle set to 90 and 100%, and click OK. Well, at this point, you can go over here, just double click this, double click there, and you got this layer mask, it will pop up. And you can see you can change the feather, change all kinds of other settings. Now at this point, nothing really changes. What you need to do is actually add something in this gradient mask, this mask for the gradient. And you can add a gradient. So just go over here, here's the gradient tool, a classic gradient, and I'm just going to apply that like there. So now what you can see is you've got a gradient applied here, so you've got the black to white, so you can see more or less, obviously, of your image below. And you can tweak it, so you can decide, you know what, let's just drag this way. Drag from there. You can resize it, so you can maybe just show just the neck, or like that. Or maybe go up here, and you can see you've got the various modes here. Let's just go for radial and apply it again. And just apply it like that. And you can tweak your gradient layer without actually having to go into the gradient layer and changing various settings, like moving things around or adding transparency within the actual gradient itself. And again, click OK. Also, with this selected, you can also apply filter effects as well. So with this, simply go to filter and go down here to distort. Now you'll notice some are not available. Certain filters are definitely not available with the mask. So just go down here, maybe distort and wave. Again, you've got this effect. You can tweak it, say change it like that, randomize, click there, create a variety of different, and then see your effect. You get a slightly more unusual mask added to your image as well as to your gradient layer. And at any point, you can always click there and delete the layer mask, as well as click there and actually delete the gradient itself. You can also use selections to limit your gradient layer. Let's just go over here and rectangular marquee tool. You can use other selection tools, of course, but rectangular marquee tool, simply just drag over, say, this part of the image, like that, create a selection there, and then go to layer and down to new fill layer and gradient. And now click OK, and you can see your gradient layer is just applied to that range. And you can then manipulate it, exact same as before. Simply just drag or increase, drag down, up and down like that. And also linear, radial, all those sort of settings still available. And click OK. Now you can see the result of that. You've still got the gradient fill layer. You can see it's grey all the way through to transparency. But you've got this mask. So just click on there. With that clicked on, you can then again double click and you can change the feather. And this time you notice what happens, it becomes blurry. So it just feathers it. You can also change the density. Let's just change that. And that will change it. So I push it all the way down like that. Push it up there. Also, you can keep that exactly like that. But again, with this selected, you can go to filters and go down here to blur and Gaussian blur and just apply a blur effect and click OK. Or maybe apply brush strokes to it. Anything can be used to modify this and then modify this actual gradient fill layer, which again, any point, you can double click, decide, you know what, I don't want that color, I want that one. And you can see now that's applied there and click OK.